Okay. So guys, in yesterday's session, we have covered fragments, right? A basic fragment structure, declaration of fragment from XML and from guys, only give me 1 minute, guys. Okay, only 1 minute. Yeah, guys, can you hear me now? Hello?
Ye- Yes, Avik.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So guys, till now what we have covered the basic fragment declaration, means creation of folder, after that creation of fragment file. Okay. And then couple of ways we have seen how to load the fragment, okay, from XML and from the controller. Okay. And then top of that, we have also seen how the fragment will work if you're using the controls like pop-up, for example, dialog box. Okay. So basically all these things are that's only we will do generally in our day-to-day UI5 development. Okay, if you are working with the fragments, nothing special we will do. Okay, basic, we will call the fragments from XML and from the controller. Only two case. And apart from that, if you're using the controls like dialog box, so make sure that you should use the fragment control rather than declaring it entirely inside the controller file. Okay. Okay, so after the fragment, after the fragment, we can start with the nested views. Okay, so once this nested view is completed, then we can start with the models. Okay, so nested view hardly it will take half an hour to explain, and then we can start with the new topic models. Okay, so model is very interesting topic, guys. Okay, yeah, can we start now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, 1 second. Okay, so what is a nested view? So nested view means, as a name suggests, okay, the view means you will have this view and within that view, you will have one more view. Okay, so just the thing is, as we can see, this is a registration page. This is a view file. Okay, inside that, you will add one line of code. Same like fragment, how we have added the code for the fragment, how the fragment is getting loaded in the same fashion, we will add a single line of code which will make sure that for that content the view file will be loaded. Okay, so in this case, if you see inside the page content, we have added the fragment. Okay, so whatever the content we have defined inside the fragment, a same content will be appear and that will be integrated inside the page content. Okay, so same like that, if I want to load a view file, okay, if I want to load the view file inside the content, so whatever the content or the controls I will define, okay, inside the new view file, so that will appear only inside the content, not inside the footer and all. Okay, so it depends on you how you want to declare it. Okay, so that is the best way that we can do. But the difference, now you will ask me what is the difference between fragments and the nested views. Okay, right? Because if that same thing is achievable with the help of fragment, then why we need to use the nested views? The thing is, let's say now, see, the fragment is for sure you are just dividing or you are just modularizing your code. Okay, you're adding a part of code inside the fragment which can be reused. But when we talk about the views, right, you cannot you cannot reuse the views. Okay, fragments are reusable components, but not the views. Okay, and on top of that, means let's say if the functionality is more. Okay, if the functionality is more inside that view, whichever view you want to declare it inside the page content, if the functionality is more and there is lot of JavaScript code is required. So it's not a good option that you declare each and every line of code inside a single controller file. Again, that controller file, the code of that single controller file will be increased because fragment doesn't have its own controller file. It will share the controller file from the existing view or the controller from where it is getting invoked. Okay, it's not the same case with the nested views. So if you're calling the nested view, means for example, instead of fragment, if I'm going to call the view inside the existing view, so what will happen, that view file will be loaded. But the basic thing about the view is always there is a controller file associated with the view file. Okay, so for that view, for that particular view, if you want to add any business logic or any JavaScript code, so that you will add it with its associated controller file. Okay, not in this registration page.view.xml file or controller file. Okay, so always view will always come with its controller file, but it's not the same case with the fragment. Fragments are independent of controllers. Means from wherever it is getting invoked, that controller file or that views controller file, the fragment will share. I hope you got the difference, guys. You got it right? The difference between fragment and nested views.
Avik, then on which purpose we can use the view,
Okay,
that nested
so
nested
I'll
view?
give you the simple example.
Okay.
So for example, let's say you have the 10 different tabs. Okay, means in an application, I'll do one thing. I'll open the API reference. Search for icon tab bar. Okay, let's consider this is your icon tab bar, which has one tab. Okay, in which you're able to see all the count of the products. Apart from that, let's say you have all different tabs. Okay, but now the thing is, the requirement is, let's say in the OK tab, I have at least 10 simple forms. Okay, 10 simple forms, and after that one table is there. Same like that in all the different tabs, I have lot of controls. Okay, so now if you go with the fragment, that's fine. You can declare it. That's not a problem, right? You can just divide the your designing part, and you can divide based on the each and every tab. You can create that much amount of fragments. But think about the controller file also in that case. Okay, think about the controller file. What will happen to your controller file? How much line of code you need to write for the controller file? If it is one or two, it's fine. If three also, it's fine. Four also, if it is that also fine. If you're thinking that in future you don't need to write a code which is more than 1000 or 2000 lines, then it is fine. But if that code, if it is increasing more than 3000, 4000, 5000 lines of code, so will that be a good option to store each and every line of code of JavaScript code inside a single controller file? Will that be easy for maintenance also? No, right? Because
No.
if you are going to use the fragments, of course, the fragment, whatever code you will write it, right? The business logic that you need to write it in a single controller from wherever the fragment is getting invoked. But it's not the same case with the nested views because you're calling a one more view inside the existing view. So that view for sure, whichever the view that you will load inside the existing view, for that view, always there would be associated controller file. Okay, that is a concept of view because there is always one-to-one relationship between view and the controller file. It's not the same case with the fragments. Okay, if you know that the controller file will remain the light, okay, there won't be any code, that much of code inside the controller file, you go with the normal fragment. But if you know that your fragment is going to increase, the controls are going to increase in single fragment file, and for sure it will create your controller file more heavy rather than single controller file, right? If the controller file is single, and for sure you know that we need to write lot of code in order to build this app. So I would better suggest that you go with the nested views. Okay, Because in nested view, each and every tabs means, for example, in this case, if overweight has the table, and apart from the table, let's consider it has other controls also, like simple form, list, or chart, or some other controls are there. So it would be easy to just divide those logic also in its different controller file, rather than mixing each and every app's data in a single file, right? So will that be better option?
Yes, yes.
Guys, are you getting it?
Yeah.
So basically, Avik, the view and the nested view
Mhm.
have the same controller.js.
Yes, view and the nested view. Yes, it's the same only. Means
So
if you
if a button is there in a view and if another button is there in a nested view, both of the
Mhm.
button will be triggered in the controller, same controller, just
No, not
just.
same controller. Both views will have their own controller.
Acha, nested view has different controller.
Yes.
Okay, okay, got it.
Okay. It's not a same case with the fragments, because fragment doesn't come with its controller file. Okay, that's the case. So that's what, if you want to reduce the JavaScript code, right? Instead of dumping all the JavaScript code in a single controller file, you can make your JavaScript file more lighter, because for sure JavaScript file, the one each and every one single whatever the line of code you will add it right inside the controller, for sure it will increase the size of the JS file. And if you compare, okay, if you compare the performance of the JavaScript file, okay, so for sure it will take some couple of milliseconds in order to load that file. After that, your execution will perform. So if consider there are two different files, okay, one file which has all the code. Let's consider one file. If you're, let's say, for all 10 tabs, you're adding the code in a single JavaScript file, which is beyond 5,000 lines. And size of that file, it's almost near to 1 MB or 2 MB. Okay. Now, instead of that, you created 5 different or 10 different controller files, JS files. Okay. So each and every code or each and every controller file hardly have 100 or 200 or 500 lines of code. So which one will be faster? That single file or this 10 files? Because each file will hardly consist of hardly 10 or 15 or 20 KB file. So for sure, because as soon as you click on the tab, that controller file will be loaded, and at the same time the view file will be loaded. Okay, so the performance would be good in that case. Okay, because if you're making your controller file little bit with a less code, right? For sure, the performance would be good in that case. You don't need to worry at all. Okay, so guys,
So
can we start with the
so
declaration part?
just a last question.
Yes.
Suppose we have an input field in view and
Mm-hmm.
another input field in nested view,
Mm-hmm.
and as they have different controller days and we need to access the input field of value of input field of view
Mm-hmm.
in nested view, then how can we access that?
Yeah, for
Uh,
that you need to provide the ID, or the second best option would be go with the models.
Acha, okay, okay,
Okay,
okay, we can see.
because if you are going to bind the model, right, for sure that my model, there are two ways for the model. Okay, that we can discuss after this. Okay, once we complete with this
Yes,
nested,
yes,
then we can
continue. Yes,
start with the model concept newly.
yes, yes, continue.
Okay, but yeah, that can be handled through the models. If you're going to create a model on the component level, means we have the component container, right? If you're going to create a model on the component level, means any view can access that model. Okay, in the entire app, means let's say if I'm going to consider 10 views in the single application, so all that 10 views will have the access of that model. Okay, if you're going to create that model on the component level, but if you're going to create a model on the view level, so only that specific view will have the access to that model. Okay. Okay, fine. So let's start with the nested views. So for declaration of the nested view, first of all, what I will do, I'll create a different, I'll create a separate view file and the controller file. Okay. So for creating the new file and the controller file, what you need to do, you just need to right click on this view file. You just write new and just provide a name of the view file. For example, let's say I want to create a new view file like login. So the extension of the view file will be same .view.xml. Okay. Would be the extension of any view file. Press OK. Okay, so your view file is created. Now same like that will create the controller file. Okay, but I'll make sure that whatever the name of the file is there, right? The name of the file will be same. Only we will be changing the extension of the file. Okay, login page dot controller dot js. Okay, so now controller file is also created. Login page dot controller dot js, registration page dot controller dot js. Okay, so now what we need to do the change inside the login view. So inside the login view, I'll copy entirely. Okay, just copy it. Go to the login page and paste it here. Okay, so now in this login page dot view dot xml, as let's say I'm going to load this login page inside registration page. Okay, inside the registration page, that also inside the page control of content aggregation. Okay, so if I'm going to add that, if I'm going to call that nested view inside the content aggregation of page, so I don't need any page. Okay, for the login, you don't need any page. You can directly remove all this. Okay, you directly remove all this. Same like fragment, right? You can directly declare one control, anything you want to. For example, means so let me search for simple form. I'll just copy paste. Okay, simple form. Okay, so form layout, yeah, it's already there, so we can just copy. Okay, so meanwhile it loads, so I'll just add the path of the login page controller. Okay, this is very important. You need to provide the controller name and make sure that whatever name you provide, right, it's the same to the login page. Now, if you go to the login page, right, so again, what changes we need to do? You just copy all the code, go to the login page, paste it. Now, whatever the methods are there, right, unnecessary methods can just remove. Okay, so just remove all these methods. Okay, now here two changes we need to make. One change we need to make this instead of registration page, you can add login page. Fine. Now our login page.controller.js file and login page.view.xml file is ready. Okay. So now let me copy the code. Okay, why it's taking so long? Okay, let's consider I'm going to add this simple form. Okay, go back and paste it here. So only one change I need to make. So instead of form, I'll make the alias name as F. Okay, because they have used F. So I'll keep it as it is. Now save. Okay, so now the next thing is now your login page or view.xml file is ready. Now how to load this nested view, right? How to call this view inside the existing view. So for calling the view, as we know that view. So view control it's coming from the which library? sap.ui.core.mvc, right? MVC is the library. It is the module from which the view file is getting loaded or getting initialized. So what we need here, we need MVC colon XML view. OK, now inside the XML view, you need to provide view name. Okay, so view name, how you will provide? Same like how we provided the path of the fragment name. Okay, same like that. You need to provide the view name. Okay, so only difference is you need to replace this fragments folder with the view. The name of the view file. Which view you are going to load? Login page. Okay, fine. So this is the process to load the view file or to load the XML view file inside the existing view file. Okay, so this is the syntax. Okay, so now let's see. Now I have saved the code. Let's click on preview application. Choose third option. Okay, it says get. Okay, guys, I think someone you yeah you pinged me this error.
Yes, yeah, me only.
You only, right?
Yes,
Okay.
but I created a new project and this problem was solved.
Yeah, because looks like you deleted the node modules folder and that is required.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so you just need to add npm install. Okay, so once you write this command, right, npm install, so automatically you'll see your node modules folder is created. And after that, if you try to do the preview application, it will open. Okay. Okay, so just remember this command npm install. Because for sure, whenever you are going to export this file, right, for sure you don't need node underscore module folder, because otherwise at least it will your folder size will be at least minimum to the 150 or 180 MB. Okay, so now if I right click and if I do the preview application, right, so it should work now. See, it's loading. Okay. Okay, so please remember this. Okay, so now can you see, guys? See, automatically that view file it got loaded and we can see the simple form here. Okay, why I removed the page? Because see, already we are adding the content inside the page, right? So if you're going to add one more page inside the existing page, what will happen? There would be change in your layout. Okay, for sure your controls will not appear properly on the view. So we should avoid all the such things so that you will not face any layout or some alignment issues. Okay, you will not face that kind of issues in the future. So make sure that if you're going to use, right, if you're going to use the nested view concept, you don't need a separate page control for it. You can directly add the content and you can paste it here. So that will work for sure. Fine, guys. Any questions in this?
So for the controller of that nested view, we need to create another controller.js.
Yeah, it's already created, right? Means,
Yes,
for
yes.
example, so let's consider, means you're going to, as of now, we have just added one simple form. Okay, let's say below the simple form, you have the button. Now, as soon as you click on the button, right, means where you will write the code. So that code you will write it in the nested views controller. Means, for example, we added login page. So login page control means whichever event will be fired, right? And that controls are already available in login page. So that business logic, you will add it inside the login page controller, not in registration page controller. Okay.
Okay, okay.
Any questions in this? Because now I'm going to start with the models. Means we can take a 5 minutes break and after that will start with the models. Any questions, guys?
Uh,
Rakesh,
no, Avik, no.
Inaki.
No, we can start more.
Okay. Okay. So guys, let's take only 5 minutes break and we'll 8:40 we'll start with the models. Guys, are you back?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, Amit.
Okay. Okay. So now let's start with with the models concept. So guys, in the models, right? In UI5, there are four types of model. Basically, there are four types of models in SAP UI5. One is a JSON model. Second one is the XML. Third one is the resource, and fourth one is the OData. Okay. So there are four types of models available in SAP UI5. And then what basically model will do? A model is just like a container. Okay, it's just a client side container which will store the data. Okay, which will store the data. And after that, it will just provide you the methods so that you can manipulate the data which is available inside the model. For example, if you consider the example of a table, right? Means if you are going to read the data, whenever you call any service, like let's say I want to read the data of customer from the backend data from the backend. So what you will do, you will call the get service or the read service. OK, whatever you do, you will just read the data. And after that, where you will store that data in UI5 application, you can store the data in array. But how you can display that data? That won't be possible, right? So what model will do in SAP UI5? So if you are going to read the data, right? So that data will be stored inside the model. OK, and at that time, if you are going to create a model, so if you're going to create a model, right? So at the same time, an instance will be created of that model. And that instance, okay, as soon as the instance is created, so data binding is also created parallelly with that. Because then only your data binding and other stuff will work. Okay, so 1 second, let me. Okay, so guys, if you're able to see, guys, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so let's consider a simple table. Okay, this table is of products. Now this table is displaying all the information of the products. Okay, so now consider you want to display all this information inside the table. So how you will display that information in ABAP? What you do, guys, for displaying this information?
We have table control and all.
You have table control.
Model full table control to show this to show the data in table format
Ah,
or
right, right.
LV.
Yeah, it's a separate table only. Yes. Okay, but let's consider you're getting the data from the third party source. Okay, from the third party, you're receiving the data, and after that, you want to display that information into this table. Okay, so what you will do as a developer, first of all, I need to read the data. Okay, so once I request the data, I will receive the data in response. And that data, for sure, you need to store that in array or something in some variable. OK, but fine. You after reading the data, once you get the response, so that you will store the data in one variable or in some array, anything you can store that easily. But how to display that information on the front end? Will you write a common logic, a common JavaScript code where you will write at least 10 to 15 lines of code where means basically you will write that code to display that information in a tabular format, right? So that's what you will do basically. But when it comes to the UI5, right? So we have already a table control with us. OK, on top of that, we just need to fill that table with the data. So for filling the table with the data, what we need to do? We need to do the data binding. OK, and then what data binding will do? It will just bring the data from the model and it will bind the data to the control. OK, so data binding means just you're binding the data to the data. You're just binding the data from data source to the control. OK, that is nothing but a data binding. But how this data binding will support? So if you want the data binding to support, first of all, we need to create the model. Okay, once you create the model, right, an instance will be created with the model, and parallelly a data binding instance is also created with that model. Okay, and that instance, right, basically data binding instance will help you to bind the data, and the whatever the data means, I'll show you in few seconds. Okay, so whatever the instance will be created, right, at the time of constructor initialization of that model. So that instance will help us to set the data inside the model and also to remove the data from the model, or let's say you want to modify some data inside the model, that can also be possible with the help of that instance. Okay, that instance will help you. That instance will make sure that each and every method should be called on that. Okay, it will just provide you with the couple of methods so that you can manipulate, or so that you can manipulate the model. Okay, so I'll show you how we can create the instance and how to initialize the model. Okay, so basically there are four types of models. One is your resource model, second one is your JSON model, third one is your XML, and fourth one is the OData. So from all these four models, only three models are used maximally. One is the JSON model, second one is resource model, and third one is OData model. We don't use XML model. Because nowadays, if you see whichever OData service you will get it, right, for sure you will receive that information in JSON format, not in the XML. Okay, because that OData model, it will help you. It will make sure that whatever the data you will receive it, right, that data you will receive in the JSON format. Okay, so we don't have to use XML model. XML model we don't have to use. Only three models are mostly used: resource model, JSON model, and OData model. Okay, but all these four models are divided in two categories: client side model and server side model. Okay, so when it comes to the client side, your XML model, your resource model, and your JSON model. So all these three models are client side model. Okay, so JSON model, XML model, and resource model, all these three models are client side model. And your OData model is only the server side model. Okay, which will act as a middleware, or which will communicate with your database or with your system, backend system. Okay, got it, guys?
Yeah, Vic, yes.
Okay, so four types of model are there, and that are divided in two parts: client side model and server side model. So in client side, XML model, JSON model, and resource model are client side model, and your only OData model is your server side model. Okay, so let's start with the first model, is the JSON model. Okay, let's start with the first model, JSON model, because 99.99% JSON model is used. Okay, and then the remaining 0.1 is there, right? In that you can use resource and your OData model. XML model we don't need it actually. Okay. Okay, sorry for that. Okay, so let's start with the JSON model. So for starting with the JSON model, what we need, first of all, we need the data in JSON format, right? Because that is important. Then only our JSON model will work. Okay, and as JSON model is a client side model, so it is intended to work with the small data set. Okay, make sure that as it is a client side model, so hardly it will store 1000, 2000, or 3000. Yeah, it will store that amount of data into the
Hello,
model.
Vic.
Okay, but make sure that you won't store lack of data in JSON model, because first of all, you will not load all that data in a single call, right? Hardly you will load starting 100 records or 500 records. Okay, so that's what we do generally. So JSON model is a client side model. On client means, for example, when you're running any app, right? A JSON model instance will be created, and in that model, you will store the data. So that data is temporarily available because your session is ongoing, right? But once your session is closed, once your session is gone, so whatever the data we have it inside the JSON model, so that will be cleared. Because at the end, once you reload, right, again that JSON model will bring the data, and it will means whatever the data you're bringing it from the backend. So the data we will store it inside the JSON model. Okay, it will only store that temporarily because it is a client side model. Okay, it's not a server side. Okay, so let's do one thing. So for before we start with the JSON model, right? First, I will design one table. Okay, same table, whatever the table you can see here, right? A same table we will design this in our UI5 application, and we will bind the information to this table. Okay, so that's our today's topic. Okay, so whatever the JSON models topics are there, like there are different binding types, different binding modes, each and everything we will cover today. Okay, so first of all, the basic thing is let's design a table. Let's design one table, and after that, let's bring some JSON data and let's store the data in JSON model. And after that, at the end, the final step would be bind the data to this table. Okay. Okay. So let me go back here. Okay, so what I will do now here, I will do the simple thing. I'll just comment out this. Okay, so on the top, I'm just adding one table control here. Okay, so let me add one table control first of all. So for adding the table controls, right? So in SAP UI5, so there are at least 4 or 5 types of tables. Okay, so the table which I'm using right now, which I'm displaying right now, is the responsive table. So responsive table means your sap.m.table. Okay, so there is one more table, grid table. Grid table are not responsive. Okay, so in grid table, if you want to display more information, that is possible with the grid table. Okay, and after that we have tree table. Tree table is there, responsive table is there, grid table is there, and again we have a smart table. Okay, see all these are table controls. Okay, so this many of different tables we have it in UI5 application. So how
Response.
to? Mhm.
Sorry, sorry, Avik. Sorry. I mean to say, what is a response table? Grid table means like we have in a website like a grid view, so we should display a lot of data. So
Yes.
responsive table means any, I mean, special feature like.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Okay, so responsive table means now on the right hand side, this is the responsive table, which is displaying as of now. So on the top, if you see, it's displaying 3 columns, right? But below that, can you see one dimension here? Dimension and the weight. Can you see now? Dimension and weight.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so these columns are automatically wrapped. Automatically means it will just display that information in key value pairs. Okay, in the single row only, if you see that columns are wrapped now. This is how it means if you're going to use responsive table, right? No matter what type of screen you're using, like it's a mobile or tablet or desktop, you're automatically depending on the configuration that you have added, the settings that you have added to this table. Based on that only the columns will be wrapped because the space is very less. Okay, but let's say I'm going to maximize it. Okay, so I'm just going to maximize. So can you see now automatically the dimension and the weight, it's going up.
Okay, okay.
Okay, this is what the responsive table. So when it comes to the grid table, right? So grid tables are not responsive. So before you design any table, you need to explain client. Okay, if the columns are less, you go with responsive table. If the columns are more, means for in a single row, if you want to display minimum 10 to 15 columns, so that won't be possible with the responsive table because at the end that columns will be wrapped, right? But if your client is expecting, he don't want that each column to be wrapped, it should display like a table only. Column should not wrap. So you need to tell client or the customer that grid table is the solution, but only the drawback of this grid table is it is not responsive. Okay, but one more thing is that you will get a scroll bar horizontally if you are going to use grid table. And it's not same case with the responsive table because responsive table will not have any horizontal scroll bar because your column at the end your columns are getting wrapped. Okay, so if I open this grid table, right? So I'll show you. See, this is how grid table will look like. You will get a scroll bar. Okay. Okay, at least I hope now you got the difference.
Yeah, yeah. And one more question, Avik.
Mhm.
So normally, say in a website, suppose we display any table, so we have secondary features like when we click on some other, suppose we click on the product name, so we used to go to another screen. Such facilities will be available through a app. So same way we can do in the using this table control.
Yeah, okay, I'll tell you. So see this grid table, right? In grid table, you can, there are only 2 or 3 features for this grid table. Okay, means for example, let's say you're clicking on this column, right? So if you're going to click on column, so there would be one small pop-up. In that you can just filter this column. Okay, you can just sort this column. So that is possible in this grid table. Okay, there won't be any option that if you click on this and it will take you to the next screen. No, that you cannot do. Only there are few properties for this grid table. And then means if you're going to click on any column, right? Only for sure you will get only few features like sorting or filtering of data. Okay, that are the basic information which they have added for the grid table. Okay.
Okay.
So there are also multi-selection, but I don't see any for wait, maybe. Yeah, there is also one more feature, drag and drop. Okay, you can also drag the record and you can drop it here. This is also one feature which is available with the grid table. Okay. But there is no, means I don't see any that you can click on column and it will take you to the new screen. That won't be possible. 1 second. Okay, let me see what all we have. See, we can also display the status if you want. Okay, multi toggle, single toggle, everything is there. None. If you make the none, so the space will be removed. See, you can also highlight alternate rows. Can you see now? The alternate row is highlighted. Like for example, the first row is in white and the second row is in gray, little bit in gray color. So this
Okay.
basically this grid table, if you have, right? So you can just do the column level filter. Means let's say if you want to do the filter, right? So that is possible with this column level filter. It's, yeah, there is the option in which you can just filter out the data. Okay, can you see now? So this sort is each and everything is available here. I'll show you. Okay, maybe in one day we can design this grid table and in that maybe we can add one filter and sorter and it will just bring that pop-up once.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, you cannot click on column and it will take you to the new screen. No, that's not a possible. Okay, so for example, if I search for sap.ui.column, sorry, search for column. Okay, at the end, you're going to add a column controls. So that column is the only control which will provide all these features, not any other control. Like so for UI also we have one column. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, this is the column for UI table. Okay, if you look at the properties, right, or if you look at the events, so only one event we have here, column menu open. Okay, because only one event is available, so there is no event like that to click on that. Okay, fine. Yeah. So let's design one form first of all. Sorry, a table quickly, and after that, let's bind the data. Okay, so 1 second. Okay. Okay, so let's design a table control. So for designing the table control, I'm going to design a responsive table. Okay, so for designing the responsive table, we have a table control under the SAP.m library. Okay, so this is the control that we are going to design. So for designing this table, so tag is the same. Okay, so because as SAP.m is already added and which is a default library. So I'm going to add a table. Okay, now inside the tables, I want to add a columns. So for adding the columns, right, we have a aggregation concept. Okay, so aggregation, it is like a relationship between your parent and child. Okay, and at the same time, whichever control supports aggregation concept, right? So for sure that control will act as a container for other controls. So in this case, table has the aggregation of columns. So table is nothing but table is the parent, and in which it has the aggregation of column. So column will act as a child to the table. Okay. So now the aggregation is columns. So I'll add the aggregation to the table. So now inside the columns, which control we need to add? It's already highlighted. If you want to use the controls, right? So we have to use sap.m.column control. So this is the control which we have to use. Okay. So I'll add column. Okay. So now inside the column, let me go back here. Now what we can add inside the column, we can add auto pop in width, demand pop in. So there are different properties. Okay. Because as this is a responsive table, it provides more features. Only in case of if you want to make the table more responsive. Okay, so for that only it's providing. But now I want to add the text, right? Because I need to add a text to the column. So where is that property? I don't see here, because again this column will have one more aggregation of header and footer. Okay, means inside, let's say you want to add a text to the column, right? So of course that would be header to the column. Okay, so by default there is a header aggregation to the column. So whenever guys, if you see the aggregation as a default, means now in this case header is a default to the column. So you don't need to specify header inside this column. You don't have to specify because it is a default aggregation. Okay, if you're going to write like this, right, it is not required because it is a default aggregation for the column. Instead of that, you can directly declare the control and it will automatically the application will understand. Okay, you don't need to take care for it. So inside the header, you can declare any control. So as I want to display the text, right, as I want to add a text to the column, so I'm going to add a text control. Okay, I'm going to add a text control. So let's say I'm going to design, right? So let's say we are going to design a table which has, second, let me duplicate this tab, samples, responsive, responsive table. Okay, so let's design, let's add a first column product. This is our first column. So same like that, I need a couple of columns. So I'm just copying it. I will paste it one by one. Okay, so five columns we will add. So one is the column, second one is the supplier. Third one is price. Fourth one is dimension. Last one is weight. Okay. Last one is weight only. Yeah. Fine now. So our table columns are ready. Okay. So now let's do one thing. Let's see the output on the app. Can you see now output here? We can see the table, right? Product, supplier, price, dimension, and weight. And then by default, as the data is not there, so by default, this placeholder will appear. Okay, so this label will appear. So no data, because there is no data in it as of now. Okay, but from where it is bringing that data? This sign up where from where it is coming? Okay, still it is coming from where?
I think that nested view is there.
No, but no, in nested view, we only added one simple form. And then for fragment also, we commented it. But I don't know why it is. Okay, we can do one thing. Yeah, I think I need to reload it properly. Let me do once again. Okay, looks like it is storing cache. Okay, so guys, what you can do, okay, just open your inspect tab, just right click on this and select the option empty cache and hard reload. Okay, let's do that and see. Oh, still it is not working. One second, let me try and check in incognito. Guys, you can also try once, okay? Check why for you also if it is getting or not. I'm not sure because this should not happen because already we have commented all the code. And the default view which it is loading is registration page only, and we commented out the code. Or should I reload it once just to check? Okay, I'll do one thing. Let me reload this. Any idea from where it is taking?
Can we delete that login page
Oh,
nested
oh,
view
oh,
and
oh,
try?
oh, 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 no, no, no. We have the code right in
Achha,
the controller.
yes, yes, yes.
My bad. Because of that, it is coming. Okay, see, now it is gone. Okay, so now the table is ready. Okay, so inside this table, we have added 5 columns: product, supplier, price, dimension, and weight. So our table is ready. So now the next thing is we need the data, right? We need the data source, which will provide the data. And after that, we need to store that data in inside the model. Okay. And then once that data is stored inside the model, right? We need to pass that information from model to the table. Okay. So for doing that, first we need the data source. So what I will do, I'll I'll get the basic sample JSON file. Okay. So we can get the basic sample JSON file. That JSON file, I will store that in my project folder. Okay. And from that JSON file, right, I will pass that information to the model. So that model will store that information into it in a temporary. Okay. When you're running this app. And then from that model, we will pass that information to the table. So first, let's get the sample JSON file. So for getting the sample JSON file, right? So guys, the best way is you can directly go to the samples in the in the development toolkit of SAP UI5. You can search for any table, responsive table or list, anything. Okay, for sure you will have a lot of option which will bring a lot of data in the controls. So before you, once you open, right, so you will see all these different options for responsive table. So what you need to do, you need to open, inspect, click on network. Okay, and after that, 1 second. Okay, so just scroll down, and after that, just click on the first example. Okay, so once you click on that first example, right? So it will load a couple of files. In that you will find one JSON file. You can just search for .json. Okay, once you search, so you will see couple of files, docu index.json or something. You don't need this docu.json. Okay, so this is also a temporary data if you want, but this we can ignore. Okay, instead of that, you can get this one. There is one file product.json. Just scroll down, and this is the right file which we want it now. Okay, just click on it, double click on it. As soon as you double click, so this is what the data which they are binding it. Okay, product collection, which has a couple of records. See, so many record it has. So this is what we need it, right? So what you need to do now, just 1 second, just copy it, control A copy. Sorry, control A, and after that control C copy. Go back to the app, create one new file. Any that file you can store it anywhere, but I would suggest that you add it inside the model. Okay, under the model you can create one new file, and you can add product.json. Okay, the extension of that file will be .json. Press OK. Okay, so this is your file, and after that just paste the content which you copied. See, your content is copied now. Just go on the top. Okay, so it giving error for 2 lines. You just remove these 2 lines of the start. Okay, fine. Now your product.json file is ready. Okay, so now your sample data source is ready. Okay, so the next thing is how to include this data source inside the UI5 application. So as of now, we just have this product.json file with us. But how to pass this information and how to pass this information to the model, then only the model will store it, right? So how to pass that? So for passing that information to the model, first of all, we need to create the model, right? We need to create the model. And after that, we need to set the data inside the model. So there are two ways to initialize the model. in SAP UI5 application. One, you can do it with the help of manifest.json file, or other you can do it from your controller.js file. So there are two ways to initialize your JSON model. One is from the manifest.json file. So this is your manifest.json file. OK, and the next is one second, guys. Yeah. OK, so one is with the help of manifest.json file, you can initialize the model with the data. Other one is you can initialize the model from controller with the data. So there are two ways to declare the model. So now we will go with the first one, manifest.json file. OK, so we will go with the first approach, and next we can go with the controller file. So let me open manifest.json file. OK, so under this manifest.json file, you will have one data source. OK, so you will have one data source. So under this data source, this the main service is nothing but it is your data source name. So same like that, we will create one more data source. OK, under this data source section, we will create one more data source for the JSON data, right? For the product.json, for that we will just create one more data source. So I'm going to provide comma, then you will provide a data source name. Let's say you are writing products data. OK, so this is your data source name. This can be any name. OK, so that's not a problem. So inside the products data, so we have two standard properties, type. OK, under this type, so what type of data or this data sources? So as my data file name is product.json file. So the type of data source is JSON. OK, give comma. Then now you add URI, because at the end we need to provide the path of that data source. OK, so the path means where it is stored. As of now, where it is stored inside the model folder, right? It is stored inside the model folder. Inside the model, we have product.json file. OK, so that's how we need to provide the data source name. OK, so here how to get the path? So you can just do one thing here. It's they have already mentioned, right, in i18 i18/i18.properties, or you can just scroll down. OK, so at the end you will see one view name. In that they have provided the path. So same like that, you can provide the path of your JSON model, or sorry, you can provide the path of your product.json file. OK, so that's how you can provide the path. So I would suggest yeah, let's try. OK, so let me provide a path here. OK, I will directly write model, because as we are inside the manifest, right? So if I want to access the product.json file, so which is inside the model. So first I will write model slash why slash, because it will access, or it will go one step inside the folder. OK, so if you want to access, or if you want to go inside the folder, right? So in SAP UI5, we have to use slash, and then you can provide the file name product.json. OK, so this is the way to create the data source inside the manifest. Guys, is it clear till now?
With that products data, we can name it anything.
Yes, you can name anything. OK, so type and URI both are they both are case sensitive. OK, make sure that whatever is there, you declare it same. But the name of the data source, right? It can be anything, but try to give it meaningful so that other developers can understand. OK, so the type of this data source is JSON, because at the end we are getting the data from the JSON file. So that's why the type of data is JSON. And URI means the path of the data source, where that sample JSON file is located. So that is located in model folder, and the file name is product.json. That only I have provided here in the URI. OK, so now let's go down. So once you define the data source, right, now you need to create the model And at the end, once you create the model, you need to provide that data source information to the model. Okay. So for creation of the model, we have one more section, that is models inside the manifest.json file. Okay. So we have one model section, which is under SAPUI5. So under this model, if you see, already they have created two models. One is I18 and one is empty. Whenever guys, if you see blank, right, like this. Okay, if the no name is provided for this, it means it is a default model. Okay, so same like while at the time of module name, means if you're going to load any libraries, right, in the view file. So always in libraries also we have the option that anyone you can make it by default. So same like that, a same concept is followed in case of models also. Okay, so if you're not going to provide any name, so it means that that model will be considered as a default model for that application. Okay, so any model I'm declaring here, it is globally available in entire app. Entire app means only specific to this app. Okay, it can be accessible in any view file or controller file. Okay, so now let's create a model. So for creation of model at the end, so as this is a closing tag of model, which is closing at line number 86. So first model, it's ending at line number 74. Second model declaration, it is ending at line number 85. So after that you give comma and then you provide the model. So let's say I'm providing the model name as product model. Okay, so this is my model name. Then give colon and then give opening and closing tag. Okay. Okay, so after once you provide the model name, right? So now what you need to declare that you need to tell what type of model it is. It is of type JSON model. So for example, if you see, they have defined resource model. Okay, so already they have defined resource model in the type. So same like that, we have to define JSON model. Okay, so I'll just write type. Inside the type, if you want to define JSON model, right, go to the API reference and search for JSON model. Okay, so this is your JSON model. So this JSON model, it's in library sap.ui.model.json model.json.json model. This is the syntax. So you just copy the path, go back and paste it here. Okay, so now this is your whatever the data source you created, right? So before that, before you provide, so first of all, we need to create the model. So now we created the model of the product model and the name of that model is the product model and the type of that model is the JSON model. Okay, so now we need to provide data source to that model. So data source is one more property. Inside the data source, you have to provide the name of the data source. So what is the name of the data source? Product data. Just scroll down and just provide it inside the data source. That's it. Okay, so your model is created and then that model will have this data as of now. Okay, so this is done. This is what the steps we need to follow if you're going to declare or if you're going to create the model inside the manifest.json file. So the steps are, so first of all, we need to create the data source. You first provide the name of the data source and inside that you provide the two paths or the properties like type and the URI. In the type, what type of data source you want to add. So it is of JSON. So I have provided the type as JSON. And then where is the JSON file or that data source file is located? It is located in model. So I just provided the path inside the URL. So next thing is you just need to create or you need to add the name of the model. And after that inside the model declaration, right, you have to provide type. So the type of model is a JSON model. And also you need to provide the type of data source. Okay, so two things we have provided. Guys, till here, is it clear? Data source declaration and the model declaration.
Yes, yes.
Okay, this is what the step and it will remain the same going forward if you want to declare in JSON model. So but make sure that as this is the model which I'm going to declare inside the manifest. So whichever model you will declare right inside the manifest, by default that model will be global model. Global means in the sense you can access this model anywhere in any view file if you want to. It is accessible to any view file or its controller file. Okay, because we declare this model inside the manifest.json file. So by default, it is on the component level. Component means it is a parent of all the levels. Okay, till now it's
So
clear.
so so this manifest.json file, any view can access the JSON model.
Yes, any view can access the JSON model.
Okay.
Means now if let's say if I'm going to create a model inside the registration page. Okay,
Mhm.
I
Mm.
created this JSON model inside the registration page.controller.js file. So that model will be specific to registration page. Only specific to registration page. Means you can access that in controller and view, but you can't access it inside the login page or in login page view file. Okay, because you have created that model which is specific to that view or controller file. But there is one more option to create or to initialize that model on the global level inside the controller. Okay, so in controller there is a feasibility to create the model on local or on the global level. That is possible. Okay, if you want that, you're thinking that instead of declaring this model inside the manifest, so you can also declare that model inside the controller. And then once you declare that model, you can also specify whether you want it a global or local. Okay, fine. Okay, so now the model is created with the product model. Now let's do the data binding. So for doing the data binding, right? So what is yeah, I'll tell you. So before I do the data binding, first of all, I need to add one more aggregation because as of now, I'm only displaying the columns, right? But I didn't define the cells because at the end, each row will have couple of cells. Now means, for example, if you say this table will have one row, so each row will have 5 cells because we have defined 5 columns, means each row will have 5 cells. Okay, so for adding the cells, there is a cells aggregation. Okay, so there is a cells aggregation for the table. Okay, let me go to the API reference. So if you go to the aggregation, right? Okay, so it's not showing here. If it is not showing here, so what you need to do? You need to go to the extents. Okay, now check for aggregation here. Now you will have, okay, cells is not here. Okay, sorry. We need to add first items and inside that we need to add a cells. Okay, sorry for that. Okay, so now I'm going to add a items aggregation. Okay, so guys, how you can identify this? You can directly go to the samples. Now this is your responsive table, right? This is your responsive table. Open any one of the app, go to the source code. Okay, go to the source code. Okay, so now inside the source code, if you see first aggregation, they have added header toolbar. After that, info toolbar. This is optional. Okay, if you want to add, you can add. Third aggregation, they have added columns. So after the columns, we need the items aggregation. Okay, and inside the items, we need column list item. Okay, so that's what we need to add. And inside the column, we have cells aggregation. So means how many columns we have? 5 columns. So we need to add 5 cells. Means inside the cells, we need to declare 5 controls. Okay, so that is the basic concept. So now we need to add an item. So items we have added. So now inside the items, what we can add? So there is an option for that also. 1 second. Yeah, go to the table. Sorry. Oh, okay, 1 second. Let me open that. Go to the API reference, search for table. Okay, aggregation. Okay, extend list base. Okay, items. So now inside the items, we can use sap.m.list item base. Okay, so now this list item base also means there are a couple of options for it. Okay, so if I search for list items right here, I'll search list item. Can you see now we have so many options? Okay, like you can use action list item, column list item, custom list item, display list item, feed list item. Okay, but for the table, the standard list item that which you can use, the best practice that the best control that you can choose is the column list item for the table. Okay, that is the best preference. So I will use column list item. Okay, and inside the column list item, if you see, we have the cells aggregation. Okay, so now let me declare the column list item inside the items aggregation. Okay, so this is our column list item, and inside the column list item, we need to add a cells aggregation. Fine. Okay, so now your cells aggregation is added, and also your okay, so this is the basic step. Okay, so next thing what we need to do inside these cells, we need to add how many columns we have? 5. So we need to declare 5 text controls. Any control if you want, but I'm going to declare 5 text controls because each cell is declare. Okay, so just declare 5 text controls. Okay, why? Because we have 5 columns and each row will have different cells, right? So that's what we are going to follow. Okay, so now what to do for the data binding? So we have the data inside the model, which is inside the products model. And after that, we need to bind this information to the table. How to bind that? So for binding that, we need to follow standard binding syntax. Okay, for binding the data to this table, we need to follow standard binding syntax. So to follow the standard binding syntax, first we need to add the aggregation of items, and inside that we need to provide a parent path. Okay, we need to provide a parent or the main path to this table, main path of the data source. And after that, we need to provide the child source inside this column list item. Okay, means for example, into this products.json file, right? If you look at it, if you look at the structure, we have all the data inside the object. Okay, we have all the data inside the object. And now inside the object, you have one parent property that is product collection. And inside this product collection only, we have all the records of the product related. And then we have one more property, product collection start. So now we don't need product collection start. We are going to bind product collection. So whatever the data we have it right inside the product collection array. So that data will only appear in the table, not product collection start. But our model will have all the information, like it will have the entire object information till here. Okay, because we have provided the entire data source information to the model. So now to bind the product collection data, only this product collection data to the table, how we need to bind. So for binding, as we are going to provide the standard binding syntax, right? So whenever you want to do the binding, right? So binding will always done in double quotes or single quotes in the string, and you have to use opening and closing curly brackets. Okay, this is the way to do the data binding in SAP UI5 in case of XML. Okay, so I'm going to provide a main path to these items. And after that, inside the column list item, whatever the property we have, right? The child properties we have, we will provide the property names, which we are going to display. So for example, I'm telling the table that bring the information or take the information from the product collection. Okay, so inside this opening and closing curly brackets, first We have the information where we have this data inside the products model. So this is the model. Just copy that model name, go back to the view file, paste it here, product model, and then greater than sign slash, and then provide the name of the property. So what is the property inside which we have the data? Product collection. Just copy that, go back to the view and paste it. Okay, so this is your main path, which you have defined to the table. So you're telling table that that table should take the information, or it should bring all that information from the product collection. Okay. So now this is the main path that which you have provided to the items aggregation. Okay. So now inside the column list item. So for this text, now we need to provide one by one the property names. Okay. So for providing the property names, we have to use model name again. Okay. Model name is always required. After that, greater than sign. And now the name of the property. So let's expand this first. Now this is your object. Okay. Now I want to define, or I want to display the product name. Okay. So now I'm going to copy the product ID in this case, or there is a name. Yeah. So name I will copy. I'll go back to here and I'll just, I will directly paste it here. Okay. So the difference between the above one and below one is, if you look at the above main path, right? We have used slash. So why we have used slash? Because we have provided this information in the object structure, right? So now as JSON model, it has the entire information in the object. So now I want to access the product collection property, which is inside this object. Okay. So if I want to go one step inside the object to access this product collection property, I have to use slash. Okay. That's why I have used slash. And this greater than sign, always you need to use it. Okay. Product greater than sign. And after that, if you see the slash, the purpose of slash is just to access that product collection property inside the object, because it's not directly available, right? It is declared inside the object. Okay. So that's why I have used slash, and after that product collection. Guys, any questions till now? Any?
I just want to see that JSON model means how actually that model is containing data.
Yes, that I will show you. Okay, I'm just explaining the structure. So at least this you got it.
Yes, this one I got.
Okay, so why I'm using the slash, and then this is the
Yeah.
main path of the items. So now below you don't need to provide product collection, because product collection is already provided to the table, and now table already knows that it needs to access the data from the product collection property. Okay, so now going forward below, you just need to use model name and greater than sign. You don't have to use slash, because that will be done, or this column list item, it will be generated on runtime. So it will access one by one. Okay, it will go to one by one record, and based on that, it will create the record in the table. We are not creating manually all the 100 records. We are writing only single code, and that code will help us to create the records dynamically on runtime. How that is done? It is done based on the aggregation concept. Okay, it will on runtime based on the JSON data, it will create the child controls. So we don't need to use slash. Okay, so same like that, I'm just copying this, paste it here. Okay, so now go to the product collection. Now the second property, what it is? See, it's already loaded. It is bringing all the same data. Why? Because we have passed all the same property, right? Name. So that's why it is bringing all the data from the name. So what is the second? Supplier? Supplier name. Just change the property name. Third one is price. Copy the price property name. Okay, so this property name only you need to copy. Provide the price. After that, Then you have the price what we have here, dimension. Okay, so looks like there is no property for the dimension. Yeah, maybe they are calculating it manually. So I will just provide the depth. Last, I will provide the property of weight. Yes, weight of the product. Fine now. Now let's see the output. Okay, can you see now information? Okay, so that's how we need to provide. Okay, so the only main thing in this, the sequence of the cells, right? The sequence of the cells, it should match with the sequence of the columns. Let's say at the first column you provided the product. Now at the time of declaring this product name, you're passing that on the fourth one. So what will happen? Data will mismatch, right? A product column, for sure it will have other data. It won't have the product name only. So the sequence of column, it is very important and it should match with the sequence of cells. Okay, now let's see how the data of the product JSON model structure is. Okay, let's see how the structure of the data is, that model is. Okay, let's go to the model and reload. Okay, now you will also see here product.json file is loading. Okay, in the network you can see that. Can you see now here product.json? Okay, once your data is loaded, then only it's loading registration page.view.xml file and then controller.js file. Okay, so first of all, it's getting the data because as this is the local file. So as we are loading this inside the manifest, right? As we have provided this information inside the manifest, so that's why this is loading first. But if I'm going to load this information in controller, so first we would have seen registration page.view.xml file and then controller and then product.json file. Okay, that's how the sequence will vary if you're going to load this data from the controller, not from the manifest. Okay, so now let's see the sequence. So I'll do one thing. I'll put a breakpoint in it. Okay, so at this line, I'm just going to put a breakpoint. So we just need to make sure that whatever model we define it, right, it should have the data. Because let's say if that file is already in pending, and then before that only if you're going to get the data, you will see the blank data inside JSON model. Because at least that product.json file, it will take some time. Okay, so now let's get the information. So as our model is declared where? Our model is declared inside the manifest. So for getting the data from the manifest model, means for getting the information of the model from the manifest, the syntax would be you need to write this dot get owner component. Okay, because it is already defined at the component level. Because it's if it is inside the manifest, by default it is on the component level. So that's what we need to write, this dot get owner component dot get model. You need to provide in string format the model name. And what is the model name? Product model. So this is the model constructor. Fine. See, this is the model constructor in which you will see the bindings also. So the binding instance will also means the binding instance is also created. Okay, at the time of model initialization. Whenever you initialize your model, right? So at the same time, the binding instance will be created. So now if you try to write dot get data, can you see now data? Okay, So for getting the information from the model, the syntax is this dot get owner component. It is a method. After that dot get model. Inside the get model, you have to pass model name in the string, and after that dot get data. So get data, it is a method which will bring the information from the model. Okay, so now the model is holding the information in the object format, which has two properties, product collection and product collection start. Okay, can you see now? Guys, any questions?
No, we can't.
Okay, so this is the syntax we have to follow because we declared this model inside the manifest. That's why I have written this dot get owner component. But let's say I'm instead of defining that model inside the manifest, if I'm going to define that model in controller, that is also on the view level. So the syntax change would be instead of get owner component, I can only write get view. Only this is the change. But still it is bringing the information, right? Because now as it is on the component level, it's already available to each and every view. So if you write this dot get view, still this will work. Can you see now? Still it is able to fetch. Okay. Guys, is it clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this is the syntax to get the model. So any questions in this? So guys, before we proceed further, do you want to practice this first?
Yes, yes.
Or should we start with the next? But I don't want to start. I mean, I thought of displaying. I can show you. I can show one more way to define this model from the controller. But I looks like that's a small thing only. Maybe that we can take in the next session. Okay. So in 10 minutes, you
Okay.
do one thing. You create one new project. Okay. Just create one new file inside the web. Inside the model, you can create a new file with extension .json, and you can open this samples. Before you open any example, just keep your network tab open, check the product.json file, double click on it. It will open in new tab, and just copy this content and paste it inside that product.json file. Okay, so can you do it now, or you want the project? So this backup I will share. That's not a problem. Okay, so anyone want to share the screen? Rakesh or
Avik,
Pinaki, you want to
Avik
try?
will do in practice in this week, and we'll show you in the next week.
Okay, so what I will do, I will just ping you the source code, okay, of the project. So the source code means the the videos which where I'm uploading, right? The videos in that only you can find the source code. Okay. So in that folder, I have created one source code folder. So in that, I will be uploading all the projects based on the sessions. Okay, so guys, any questions you have for this model?
No, Avik, we'll practice and we'll see in the next.
Okay. Okay, then fine. Yeah. So we can close this call. So no questions, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay then. Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys. I think today maybe we covered a lot. Actually nested files and then basic JSON model. So maybe in the coming session we can complete rest other topics like binding types and binding modes, and then we can start with the resource model. Okay. So once this resource model is done, right, then we can start with the formatters and other concepts.
Okay, Avik, okay.
Okay, guys. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Avik. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, you can
Thank you,
drop
Avik.
off, guys. Not a problem.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.